Hello everyone, welcome back to our channel. Today we're talking about healthy eating. So I asked the culinary arts teacher at my school about her experience with food, both personally and within the classroom. How long have you been teaching culinary arts?
I started teaching culinary arts about 3 years ago. I started out as a long-term sub, and I fully committed to it about 2 years ago.
What factors do you think are important in having a healthy relationship with food?
I think the most important thing is for young adults, especially with all of the use of the internet we have, is for them to understand that there is so much content that's true out there, but there's also content that isn't true about food. And I like to try and teach students, instead of looking at food at whether it's bad or good, you want to start thinking of it as like, am I consuming things balanced? Am I incorporating all the food groups? Am I balancing my lifestyle and the food I'm eating?
Do you see a difference in how girls and boys treat food in your class?
Honestly, as my time has increased in the classroom and watching the girls kind of make the food and become kind of consumed with the content that they're learning around it, their image of it is very positive, and I would say for the most part, they all kind of indulge in the classroom.
Are there any specific food types that people seem to shy away from eating in class?
I think we spend a great deal of time on the baking unit, and sometimes I do hear students discussing, I feel like I've eaten so much, I feel like I'm bloated, or we've had so many baked goods, like I don't know if I can eat anymore. But I think it's really cool because I do teach the students the science behind food and explain why you feel bloated after you consume different types of baked good. So I try to eliminate those flash words that so many students will use to describe how they feel after eating food. And I feel like sometimes with especially young women, we hear one person kind of start to complain or say they're feeling a type of way about something, and they kind of latch on and want to also say that, so that the attention is also on them. But for the most part, I would say baked goods. I haven't really had any issues with any of the other food groups.
Do you think your class can be a factor in helping kids to have a healthier relationship with food?
I absolutely believe so. I think one of my favorite parts about this class is teaching young adults about the food myths in the world, really explaining and breaking down like, what is a gluten-free diet? Is it absolutely necessary for individuals who don't have diseases, who can't break down gluten? What does it mean to go dairy-free, or what does it mean to incorporate dairy in your diet? And I think that this class is more than just teaching students how to eat. I definitely think that it helps students understand their relationship between food and their body.
What is your favorite meal to cook with your students?
My favorite meal to cook. I think my all-time favorite food slab is always the pizza, which is, incorporating the grains unit. And then they have the red sauce with fruits and vegetables. And then we can top it with different things like mushrooms, bell peppers, different vegetables. Some of them will do like pepperoni and turkey, incorporating protein. So of course the cheese is the dairy. So I think that's one of my favorite labs, just because it brings the class full circle, and it really helps them understand like it's not about just eating the pizza, it's about learning how to make the pizza and why it's critical to understand what you're doing when you put it in your body.
Have you always been comfortable with food?
I have not always been comfortable with food, actually. When I was a young adult, I did kind of struggle with the image of food and wanting to be like my most best self, and being a student athlete, there's a lot of pressures. But as I became a young adult and I started studying more about food science and nutrition, I became really just kind of engrossed with the content I was learning about, and just understanding that food is not just about calories, or it's not just about eating, it's about your quality of life.
And is there anything else that you think is relevant to body image and food?
I just think that with so much use of social media and the internet, I think that we could be using it for so much better use when it comes to food. I think there's so many individuals on things like Instagram and Snapchat, just kind of like not trying to trick individuals into diets, but do kind of use dieting and nutrition as a way to scam individuals out of their money. But there's so many free resources about food and encompassing a diet that improves your quality of life, and you don't have to cut things out of your life in order to be healthy. Being healthful is about what you eat, what you're doing, your emotional, mental, academic states. It's all about just encompassing a life that is full and balanced in order to be healthful.
So the same week that I talked to our culinary arts teacher, she gave me a couple of recipes that were healthy and fun and supposedly yummy. So the Golden Girls and I met up at my house and we made a meal together. We made some quesadillas, a vegan vegetable soup, and some pico de gallo.
Thinking out loud made her stand out. She never followed the crowd. Pretty girls left her alone. She tried to hold on and wait for someone who could see who she was, but she needed to belong. She needed to belong. She chose the pretty way for shining new admirers. She goes the pretty way.
After we finished our food, we passed out bowls of soup and pieces of quesadilla, and everybody sat down and started eating, and a silence went over the room because everybody was eating, everybody was enjoying, and it honestly tasted so much better knowing that we had made it ourselves. When we talked about the food after, everybody said, you know, it tasted good and it felt good, and you could really feel how healthy the ingredients were. Everything that we used was organic, most of it was just vegetables or cheese, and nothing was really processed, and we really showed that you can make something that's healthy and delicious. It was a really fun experience. Everybody pitched in, everybody did something different, and we had a lot of fun in the kitchen just messing around and making some good food. So we moved into a discussion about eating disorders and obesity and some other health issues associated with poor eating. So in our discussion about eating disorders, we had a guessing game where I stated some facts and the girls filled them in, and as you can see, some of the facts are a little shocking and some of them are not so surprising. So these are some facts that we're going to try to fill in, kind of like a guessing game, from ANAD, which is the ready? National Association of Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders, and also from NEDA, which is the National Eating Disorder Association. So basically, I just want to go through, and we're going to read the fact together, and then you guys are going to guess what you think it is. Okay. So blank million people in the U.S. struggle with an eating disorder. How many million do you think?
In the U.S., how many people are there in the U.S.?
I say 30.
They're definitely more than
I
that.
was gonna say 40.
Yeah,
I think it's like 30.
They're around there.
There are 301.3 million people in the U.S.
Oh.
So how many out of those have an eating disorder?
60.
160. No, I'm
I'm gonna say
I'm gonna say a flat 50.
Alright, Grace was head on at 30 million. Every blank minute someone dies as a direct result of an eating disorder.
5.
5, yeah.
And 3.
I was gonna say 6.
What do you think?
Like 5. 5.
Every 62 minutes.
Oh. Like every hour.
Yeah.
2 minutes.
Blank percent of American women suffer with anorexia.
I think 50. This is dying.
50%?
That's
No.
a lot. I don't think that's true.
I think
20.
okay.
But
Well,
that's
like
diagnosed people.
unreported, I could say 50, but like,
That's
anorexia, that's a lot, yeah.
Like just anorexia, like between
Yeah, like not.
a girl and another girl, like one of them has to
Yeah,
have
it's
anorexia, like
maybe
that's
like 20.
20?
Yeah, I'm gonna say.
Bless
you.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
like 15.
Yeah,
that's what I was
similar.
gonna say 15.
0.9%.
Oh, I was way off.
It's close to 1 in 100, which is still a lot. Yeah.
That means like. Never mind.
Yeah, let's not do math. Blank percent of American women struggle with bulimia.
Less probably.
I think it's
anorexia.
0.8.
Yeah, maybe like
Like
0.6,
0.5.
yeah.
1.5.
No,
Really?
I don't know.
Well, this also includes over exercising too.
Yes, because bulimia does include the over-exercising aspect, and that's definitely popular, as well as if it's reported, I think bulimia is oftentimes a lot more easier
Yeah,
to
exactly. Like,
diagnose.
it's so much easier to diagnose because
If
if
you're
you're
throwing up.
and you like it's for a purpose and you know the purpose.
Yeah.
I think it's also easier to like eat and then throw up rather than like
Then
starve
have
yourself.
self-control.
That's like a lot of
Yeah.
self-control.
I feel like also maybe possibly anorexia, because I know more about anorexia than I do bulimia, and anorexia is more widely talked about, so maybe people feel more ashamed of it and they
Yeah.
don't want to have it reported.
Yeah. Okay. So blank to blank percent of the risk that associated with anorexia is genetic.
I know anorexia was genetic at all.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think it's probably actually a lot.
Yeah. So because
I think
anorexia.
it's 10 to 20.
Yeah, it's not saying like it's like a gene carrying thing. It's similar to depression, where just because your mom has depression doesn't mean that you will, but it increases your risk. It's just like cancer and stuff like that too. It doesn't necessarily mean you'll have it, but it increases your risk.
Really 10 to 20.
I think more than that.
So 50 to 60. Okay, the actual number is 50 to 80%.
Wow.
And a good start.
That's a lot more than I thought.
Okay, other facts. Half of diagnosed bulimia patients also suffer with a mood disorder. More than half of diagnosed bulimia patients have anxiety. And about half of anorexia patients also have anxiety, OCD, or social phobia, or another mental or social disorder. So I find that very interesting because that seems to be a trend with body image and mental health. Also, some other ones that are like less common, as Molly has mentioned, binge eating disorder, which often is not recognized by medical professionals sometimes, and it can also be left as eating disorder, otherwise specified.
Because of fat people eating disorder.
Yeah. So binge eating disorder, it's like you binge, you eat a lot, and then which is similar to the aspect of bulimia, but then rather than purging or throwing up or whatever, you starve. So it's kind of a mixture of bulimia and anorexia in that sense. Also, it's like the terrible thing about the cycle of binge eating disorder is oftentimes people will binge because they're upset. Because binge eating disorder has a lot of connection to depression and anxiety. So people will be sad, so they eat to make themselves feel better. And then after they binge and gorge, then they feel awful about themselves because they did that, so they starve themselves. And then they starve themselves, and they're so hungry, so then they binge again. So it's like a scary cycle. Also, so approximately 2.8% of American adults in the U.S. struggle with binge eating disorders. And they found that half of the risk for this is genetic. Also, it's I don't even know how to say it, diabulimia. I didn't even know this was a thing until I was doing some research on this a couple weeks ago. But diabulimia is basically somebody who has type 1 diabetes. You take insulin because type 1 is insulin dependent. So what someone with diabulimia has is they purposefully don't consume as much insulin as they need in order to lose weight. So that's kind of scary because if you don't inject your insulin when you need it, then that can cause like malnutrition and like lots of issues which usually make you skinnier but also unhealthier. So after kind of hearing those facts, are you guys surprised by the numbers?
Yeah.
Do you think why do you think that, because even though like we said, these percentages are small percentages, but when you think about the number, that's actually a lot. Why do you guys think that those numbers are so high?
Media.
Media?
Bullying.
Bullying, that's definitely. I feel like too, because we talked about how around 50% of the risk for most eating disorders is genetic, right? So I think that if you're genetically disposed to have an eating disorder and then add it on with this pressure, that just kind of pushes people, right? Because it's one of those things where just because you are genetically at risk to have something, it doesn't mean that you'll develop it. There's something that usually triggers it or adds on to it and causes it to be no longer dormant.
Over the weekend, I took a bus to and from Vegas to visit my boyfriend, and on the way back, I was in the bathroom at a pit stop, and like I overheard this conversation that sounded like it was between a woman and her child, and the woman was like, she was like as soon as we get back, like the first thing I'm gonna do is go to the gym. Like I have to go to the gym. Like she was like so frustrated. Like I need to go to the gym. Like as soon as we get back, and the kid was like, well, why? And like I could hear her saying, this is why. Look at this. Do you see this and this? Oh my God, do you see this? And like I can just imagine her like pointing to things on her body, saying like, I need to change this right this second. This is terrible. This is bad. I need to go to the gym. And I was just sitting there thinking like, you're teaching your kid that like that's what like, oh.
That definitely happens a lot. Like that's a very common thing that happens with mothers.
You are also an answer. So like the dance, I don't want to say industry, but like the dance industry world, the dance world. Yeah, you have to be. It's very like judgmental. You have to be a certain size. Like I was like removed from a ballet company because I was too big.
Yeah.
Like, not because I was not good enough, because like my rib cage was like inches too big.
Yeah.
Which was ridiculous. So like I don't know. I think that although I was moving, I still love dancing. It's just you have, I don't know how to word it, but you have to be, the dance world forces you to like,
I don't want to say it, there's so much like stereotype with the body type that companies really enforce it.
Yeah.
And I think there's like old stigma, like this kind of off topic, but they used to have like weigh-ins, and literally the average number of the ballet dancer had to be 98 pounds, and if the girl was over, she'd be cut. And there was so many eating disorders.
Yeah.
And people, a lot of like professional, like female ballerinas smoke because it kills your appetite. So like, it's just ridiculous.
At least they've like gotten rid of that for the most part.
I'm like never ever gonna pass the BMI. Like it's not obesity, but I'm always like overweight.
Yeah.
And it's like, so like I never pass that test, and you have to pass 5 out of 6. So that means that I have to pass every single actual fitness test.
And you know,
and like skinny people don't have to do that.
I was really close to being overweight.
My last one, my freshman year one said I was like up 2 points away from obesity. It's like,
Also, why is the BMI part of the test?
it's literally, it's nothing to do with your muscle, it's literally just like height and weight. Like, does it make sense? Like the correlation? Like,
And I remember like in middle school, I like developed pretty early, and
me
so
too.
I was always leaning overweight, but I was perfectly healthy, and it
Yeah.
really threw me off.
I was just like,
because I was like,
That happened a lot in like middle school and like elementary school. I get it.
But also, like, I'm healthy, like, I'm fine, but it said I was underweight.
Yeah,
I don't know,
I've
it's
gotten that
just
too.
oh yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just because I need to build more muscle, okay? Like, I'm working on it. Okay, but also, you know, as we know, like, obesity definitely has, like, a lot of health issues, which is why, you know, it doesn't matter whether you're thick or thin, but you definitely want to take your health into consideration.
thick.
And on the Everyday Health Foundation, they have found, like, there's a really strong correlation between obesity and depression. And they found that people who suffer with obesity are 25% more likely to experience mood disorders like depression, and like social isolation, bad body image. I mean, for obvious reasons, because everybody in society fashions. Everybody's beautiful. Also, like, they found that in teenage years that people who are depressed are more likely to become obese, and people who are depressed are more likely to overeat or make poor food decisions. There are a lot of different resources that people can use in order to stay healthy, so I really urge you guys to use them. There are a lot of links between your eating habits and your mental health. So while some people might think that their weight or their body or their eating is not really important to their overall health, it really is, because it can affect your thinking and your body image. So everybody, stay happy, stay healthy, and stay beautiful. We'll see you next time on the Golden Girls channel.
No, but it's like when I sneeze, you're like, ew.
But who she was is lost. Who she was is lost. She chose the pretty way for shining new in my
Oh, I'm failing at this.
Brazil passed a law that allows people to treat homosexuality as a disease and no one's talking about it.
Are you serious?
I want to beat someone with Louis Vuitton first.
the pretty way